YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to share a single book review, which I don't do very often, but I did want to participate in the latest iteration of the Indie Press project. In July, the project was to read a book that had been published by Two Lines Press, and I chose Bright by Duanwad Pimwana because I saw Doris from Aldi Books reading this book, or she chose this book as her pick for the Indie Press project in July, and I wanted to read it as well. This book was originally written in Thai and it was translated to English by Mui Poopopsakul. This book was first published in Thailand in 2003 and it was published in English. The English translation was published in April 2019 by Two Lines Press. And in case you haven't already heard about the Indie Press project, it is a year-long project, I think, where every month a different independent or small publisher is chosen, and the goal is to read a book that was been published by that publishing house and share a review of that book, just to bring awareness to the books that are published by smaller publishers. And I've been wanting to participate in this all year, but I finally got a chance to read the book in July. And so I'm here to talk about Bright by Duanwad Pimwana. And this was an absolutely wonderful book. It is a very dismal subject matter, but written so well and communicated so expertly that I felt like I was seeing this village and this character. The main character is a young boy named Kampal, and he is 5 years old when his parents split up and abandon him. Mother and father are fighting in the opening scene, and the mother moves out. She leaves in the middle of the fight, and she returns at the end of the day and picks up her belongings and leaves the father and the two children behind. One child is 10 months old, and the older child is 5, and she leaves them behind with their father. And it seems like he has no plan as to what he's going to do with the children. He can't afford to live in this tenement by himself. And so he takes the younger child, he takes the baby to I assume it is his parents. He's taking the child to go live with a grandmother. And he leaves the 5-year-old behind and says just kind of hang out in the street, and eventually the hope and the plan is that someone will feed him. And he says that he'll come back at the end of the day, but he really has no intention of coming back at that point. And over the course of several days, he does return, but he cycles in and out of his 5-year-old child's life, never really claiming him. So this child is abandoned. He knows that his parents are alive, but for all intents and purposes, he's living as an orphan. And he's living at the mercy of the neighbors who are living in desperate circumstances themselves. And so for a while, they are proud of the fact that they're trying to pitch in to help feed and shelter this child, but eventually no one really wants to get saddled with him as a long-term option. No one wants to be his long-term caretaker, and so he is, for all intents and purposes, abandoned like an orphan. But a 5-year-old boy who doesn't really understand abandonment. He does feel the loss of someone to care for him, and he knows that he doesn't have anyone to protect him, and so he has to protect himself. And so the book is about his life, his adventures, where he's able to just kind of fall into the glory days of being young and carefree and being able to run wild without continued adult supervision. But there are also moments when he realizes the lack of parents, where he realizes the lack of supervision, where he realizes the lack of just someone caring for him, where he is out of school, and there are days when people are competing for who to feed him, but there are also days when he is hungry because the person who he stayed with last night hasn't provided him breakfast. So there are points where this book is just absolutely expert in its conveyance of the carefree days of childhood, but there are also moments where you almost want to weep for how this child is experiencing life, and at 5 years old, how he is forced to become responsible for himself, where he is forced to think about finances and planning for his own financial future, because he needs to know that he has some kind of security, and so there are jobs that he will take on, and he has to make sure that he's saving enough for his expenses. So as a child, you expect that he is completely subject to the id, and he's just going to do what he wants to do right now. Instant gratification should be his total motivation. But you see him maturing and becoming responsible for himself. So the fact that this is written in a third person narrative gives us an opportunity to observe this child going through his life, going through his adventures, but also his vulnerabilities. And so there's a lot of really moving statements in this book. The book is, because it's translated, it's also written in almost simple language, because I suppose maybe the translator doesn't want to add too much of their own writing style, so they're translating this work in very simple language. So it's easy to follow, almost as though we're reading from the perspective of this 5-year-old or 6-year-old child, but not simplistic, just simple enough to communicate that childlike atmosphere. But there are things that are just so haunting about the representation of this village. Again, the book is set in Thailand, and we are seeing evidence of politics and international warfare. And there is a character who is very literary, who is always trying to recommend books to this young character. And there is a poem that he shares that is just so profound, as it shows the vulnerability that children have just to being born in poverty and not having control over their own lives. And of course that contrasts with our main character, who at 5, and we follow him to 6 years old, and him, you know, like I said, being aware of his own future, but also trying to plan for it and take care of it. And this book was so deep, so moving. I gave it a 5-star rating before I was even finished. I wasn't sure that I loved how the book wrapped up, but I don't feel like it detracted from my overall enjoyment of this. So this was a 5-star read for me. And I think it was my first time reading anything from Two Lines Press, but I do want to look out for more books from them. If this is anything to go by, then I think I'm going to enjoy the books that they have published. So I'm going to be more intentional about looking for books from Two Lines Press in the future. And so, yeah, that was my contribution to the Indie Press project for July. I'm not sure what the publishing house for August is yet. If I find out before I publish this video, then I'll link it in the description box down below. But for now, let me know if you've read anything from Two Lines Press. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's talk in the comments if you've read Bright by Duanwad Pimwana, or anything else that was translated by Mui Poopopsakul, and you want to recommend that to me. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you have a recommendation of a book that was set in Thailand that is along these lines, if you have learned anything else about the culture that you think might help me get more aware of the culture, more awareness than I got from this book, I'd love to chat with you in the comments about anything that surrounds this book, or just about anything. I'm always up for a bookish conversation. So let's talk down there, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.